This is a Quiet Loud Studios production, the podcast network where reflection meets amplification.
Hello, Athlete Mindset community. This is Lisa Bonta Sumii, the host of Athlete Mindset. Before we dive into this episode, I want to invite you to support the mission and purpose of our show. For $10 a month, you can help to make sure these conversations get to as many athletes, teams, coaches, and sport mental health environments as possible. As a subscriber, you will receive exclusive content and updates on current topics in athlete mental health, and you'll be directly contributing to the betterment of mental health for all athletes. Join the cause. Subscribe at sportse.io/athlete and make a difference today. Again, that's sportse.io/athlete. With your support and amplification, we can ensure more voices are heard and more individuals and communities are positively impacted. I'm super excited to be here with the Athlete Mindset community, and joining us today is a phenomenal Dom Easley. He is an NFL veteran defensive tackle, cross-sector entrepreneur, real estate investor, and mental health and wellness advocate. He's also a writer and a public speaker. He was drafted in the first round, 29th pick overall by the New England Patriots in 2014. And went on to win a Super Bowl his rookie season. From growing up in the projects of New York City with a single mom to fighting through countless injuries and an opioid addiction, Dom wants to give back. This year, he founded in 2024 the Easley Foundation. It is focused on supporting student athletes from underserved populations through holistic personal development. Dom, thanks for being with us today.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
I appreciate it too. And there's so much we're going to dive into today. So I just appreciate you being here with me. Let's start with growing up. Growing up, the projects of New York City with the single mom. Is there a specific story or moment or season in your life during that time that sticks with you most?
Story or time. I mean, honestly, growing up, yeah, like we had a lot of. Right now that I'm looking at it from as an adult, it wasn't the safest, it wasn't the best, but as a kid, we were happy. It was happy. Like when they talk about money, more problems. Oh yeah, being poor and the kid. Well, being poor and the kid. So you got to put those two together. Being poor and the kid really allows us to love on each other, but also have a lot of, I guess, unseen by knowledge and by history and by ancestry, a lot of trauma behind it as well, but we don't realize it. We just think that's the way of life. So
exactly.
I don't have a specific story that really like stuck with me in my childhood, like when I was a child. Because my mom was great. My mom, we was poor. Like I say something funny.
Okay.
I didn't realize how poor we was until I was an adult, until I realized, one, we lived in a studio apartment, me, my mother, and my brother. We put up a sheet as a divider of the living room and the kitchen. And then we had a futon. We had a futon as a couch in the bed. So some nights, some of us would sleep on the two of us sleep on the futon, some of us won't. But it was like we didn't realize how poor we was during those times. You know what I mean? But at the same time, living in that area, that community, also put a lot of trauma onto us as far as not talking about our feelings, not talking about how we feel, not having the best sneakers or being made fun of, or like we took that in a different way.
Yeah, that makes sense. I mean, what you're saying is you only knew what you knew. It just was life, right?
Exactly.
You don't have anything to compare it to. It's just what it was. And I think, reflecting back and realizing, gosh, what you didn't have, but I think also knowing you well enough to know that you're reflecting back on what you did have, happiness, love, each other. There's many a story about, young kids coming up like you did, getting to the NFL. What do you think were like the key components to you making it to the league? Because as you know, not everyone does, and it's a small percentage.
My it's very black and white for me. When I was a sophomore, when I was a freshman in high school, that was the first time I started playing football. My freshman year in high school, because I was always too fat to play as a child. Like I was one of those kids that ran around the track field trying to play pee-wee with garbage bag, but just never made weight. So I gave up on football, started back in high school, was gonna quit after my freshman year. I was doing great, but just didn't. I wanted I love basketball and baseball. And then my brother came back. My brother came back from living in South Carolina, and that was like the start of everything from Dominique Easley, from who he is now. We had the number one player in New York. His name was Dominique LeGrand. And I love this part about him. His work ethic was immaculate. You couldn't hold him. He wanted to work out. He wanted to be the best, and he showed it. So I took that on, and I just coattailed him. I literally, like, whenever I would, after our season, my sophomore season, he would go work out. I would call him, "Where you at?" "I'm at the gym." It doesn't matter where I'm at, what I'm doing, finding the bus, and I'm finding him. So I literally coattailed him throughout that whole year, because he only had one more year. And it's unfortunate, but going back to our childhood, I was an alcoholic by 15. But at the same time, I was also working. Our day consisted of going to school, going to track practice after school, after track practice, going to my friend's house. And my friend, his mom lived in Africa, so we used to live at his house majority of the time as well, us as kids. And this is where I'm a sophomore and they in a senior in high school. So we used to go to his house and then go to a local gym, go work out, and then go to our rivalry high school where we live and go run 300s, which is more track. And then afterwards at night, we used to just party and just drink and just get obliterated. But that was an everyday thing. It didn't matter what, like that. So we worked it. And what came with that, with him, I was fortunate enough to be young enough, but with him, he continued to drink in college. So I followed him through college, and he continued to be the person he was, which was, at the time I couldn't see it, but he was arrogant. He had to be arrogant because we was from New York and we played football. So he had to be a certain way. And that followed him, and that honestly, like, got him kicked out the NFL, got him being able to he had to transfer from one school and then go to another school and then not be able to make it to the NFL. And the reason why I'm telling this story is because that's the reason why I made it to the NFL. He started me in so many different ways. He allowed me to create my work ethic through him. Unfortunately, he also allowed me to see the damage that can be done if I continue to be the person who I was as a sophomore in high school. You know what I mean? He is the reason why I was able to sustain myself and not allow myself to dive with the deep end, because where we're from, unfortunately, we all do something to sabotage ourselves and end up back where we're from. So sorry for a long story, but that's like the real reason why I'm able to be here today.
Wow. No, don't apologize for your story. I want to hear it. I think people out there want to hear it because it's inspiring. It's a lot. It's humbling. It's like, I feel very somber, but also inspired at the same time. The real of what it is to live where you grew up, to try and find a role model. That's what he was to you, a role model, right? Of what to do up to a certain point, and then exactly what not to do. But that's easier said than done, right? Like, I think you had mentioned the trauma of growing up in the environment that you grew up, the ancestral trauma of being a Black man in this country. And I know you have roots in other countries. Like, it's deep. And I think being unsupervised as young men in that environment and just doing what the heck you could and wanted to do is another factor of living in that kind of environment. It's a lot. Unsupervised, unchecked. I'm just trying to be like the big boys. Like, you were younger. 2 or 3 years in high school at that teenage years is a big difference in, right? In maturity, in just the biological rate that humans develop at that age is a huge difference. Only a couple of years, but at that time, it's right. And so it's very impactful. But I think that what you're telling me is a guide, a mentor, someone you could learn from about how to be, and to also have the discernment at some point to know how not to be, which is tough because now you become, I don't know if you see it this way, more successful than him. And he was your guide and mentor, right? I mean, at least on the football field.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's a big, it's actually a big thing like that. That actually, that was another reason why I have bad insecurity when it comes to success.
Tell me more on how it relates to him.
Because of that, well, not because just of him, just for where we're from. We never, it's definitely him, like he's a major part, but I never seen or talked to or even was able to touch anyone that was successful outside of Staten Island, New York, growing up. So when I was in that time frame, when I was in high school, after he left, he was the top guy. And then that next year, I surpassed everybody that ever came from New York at that point. So everybody started just acting different. My friends' moms was calling me, talking to me different. Family members was coming out the blue. And this was just in high school. So people just started acting different. And me, myself, and I'm a loner. But I'm not. Like, I'm an introvert, but I'm also an extrovert. The people I keep close to me is very, very thin. So the people who were reaching out and conversating with me just started being real weird. And I'm not the type of person that can really have a poker face. So that right there always created an insecurity that whenever success came to me, I didn't want to talk about it. I didn't want to like gloat in it. I just like kind of crumbled up because I never wanted my homeboy who I grew up with, who we went through all this. We was poor together, to think that I ever think that I'm better than him. You know what I mean? And that was a fault of mine because I didn't understand how to communicate that. And that goes back to emotional intelligence and just learning vulnerability at that age wasn't a factor at all where he was from. You know what I mean? So I just took that in, and yeah, I'm when it comes to sports, when it comes to competition, you're gonna hear everything out of my mouth. But when it comes to other people putting success on my name or talking to me about it, it gets real uncomfortable for me, even still to this day.
Does that have anything to do with, I'm gonna not quote you exactly, but just a little while ago we talked about how it's almost familiar, or like going back to how you were raised? Like, is it connected to that?
Definitely. That is something that I've worked past in a lot of different stages of my life, but this one I still haven't. Meaning, like, I used to be the one, this is where, it's because where I'm from, and not realizing it's where I grew up, but it's not who I am today, right? That's part of life. You need to grow.
Yes.
You need to grow from where you start. And if you don't, that means you're really not growing. So yes, I think it definitely derives from my childhood. And like you said, the person who helped me, I seen crumble when he wasn't drafted, and I see him now, who he is. And unfortunately, it's everything that we were as kids, but now as an adult. You know what I mean? So we besides the working out, it's just all the alcohol and so forth and so forth.
Yeah, it's tough. I mean, I know that of course, as a young kid, you're not going to know emotional intelligence. You're not going to, you're surviving. That's
Yeah.
almost like an extra, right? That's almost kind of a luxury to and a vulnerability at the same time and kind of risky. Like if I actually access how I'm feeling, even if I knew how, I might crumble using your words. Like that's a lot to deal with. And I think that the trauma that you speak about, ancestral, environmental, from alcohol, is the young person trying to survive, trying to deal with what is inside and what is outside around you.
Yeah.
Right. And that is socially accepted to be able to drink. It's almost cool when you're young, right? To drink and party. It's cool. But really, I think it's, inadvertently self-medicating and numbing your feelings and experiences to get through the day.
Yep.
Yeah. Yeah. And that you don't grow out of that unless you do the healing you're talking about. It's not about age. You can't, it's learning about other ways to cope, which I know you have, and you're not perfect. I'm not perfect. We're always growing and learning. But the insight that you have about and the self-awareness about how your childhood impacted you and how to keep growing is so important. I mean, with that, you have went on to be an amazing professional football player. And I'm sure as I get to know you, realizing an amazing human, amazing husband. And so how did the NFL help raise you? What did you learn from those experiences in the locker room, on the field, with your teammates and off, in social situations, your coaches? What is there a particular sort of, again, story or things that you learned from that time in your life?
Well, it was kind of different. It was different learning points. And when I say that, it was when I was in the NFL, I didn't really learn anything about myself, to be honest. When I got out is when I really learned about who I was and what I actually did learn. I like to analyze even my situations. So I like to look back in the past and, like you said, what did I learn? In the NFL during those times, I don't think I honestly learned anything but trauma when I was in the NFL. When I got out, what I realized I did learn, what I realized I did learn when I was there is how to be a professional. Better way, right? It's let me put it more on an honest word. How to play the game. Right. How to honestly play the game. Because you come in the NFL and you get around a bunch of different people that comes from all over the world, a bunch of different coaches that come from all over. So a lot of people in the NFL weren't the people who I was drawn to. Because for me, and like I said, I like to analyze, and I'm a psychoanalyst. And I know it can be bad sometimes, but I feel like a lot of cats, and this also has to deal with my insecurities from success as well. But I feel like a lot of cats like to bathe in their spotlight, but not be true to who, not dry off all the way. And when I say that, yeah, when I say that, it's yeah, they're getting showered with what people see from the outside, but when you around them, that's not who they are. That's so it's me. I kind of like I said, I'm a loner, so I learned how to play the game, how to be a professional when it comes to business, and how to further understand people and how to use what we obtain, which is our name, which is the status, which was the NFL, right? With that, to be able to use that as an advantage in this world. And in those times, I also learned how much trauma that I actually went through when I was playing as well, because my experience was a little bit different.
Yeah. I want to take a deep dive in that. I mean, I think first of all, I want to clarify, when you say I learned to play the game, you're not talking about the X's and O's of football.
No.
No.
I learned how to create an opportunity
Yes.
without sabotaging yourself.
And that's easier said than done.
Without a doubt.
Because I can imagine that, there's the sort of NFL face, the pro face, and who you need to be for the organization, for your coaches, etc. And then who is really you. And like, when do you put one helmet on and take the other hat off and be true to yourself? That's a tough navigation. But I think looking back now, it sounds like there's a lot that you learned that you didn't think you'd be exposed to, but like it was tough. So let's talk about the trauma in the NFL. I know that you had countless injuries and an opioid addiction. I'm sure that is part of the unique story that is Dom. Tell us about those injuries and how the addiction kind of reared its ugly head.
Yeah, so it's crazy. When people look back at my career, right, they see a lot of injuries. I actually only tore my ACL one time in the NFL. Throughout my 5 years in the NFL, I had a bunch of surgeries, but there were more cleanups.
Okay.
And I'm saying this is because when I first came in the league, when I got drafted in 2014, I got bitten by my dog. My dog bit me up because I brought him to a place to become what's the dogs that can go on a plane and stuff?
Emotional support pet or emotion? Yeah.
Yeah, emotional support dog, but it's something further that you have to get a kind of a training for. So I sent him out there. He got abused, and then unfortunately, he wound up biting me. So I was, and it almost went down to the bone. So I was in the hospital a week before the draft. 2014, the draft was May 8th instead of April 28th, which is my birthday. So I was in the hospital a week before the draft, and no one can find out that I was in there because of that. Because obviously my draft stock would have dropped. Because by the time I got drafted, the injuries didn't heal for another 6 months. So I just tore my ACL my senior year. So everything that I worked, all the rehab and everything like that, just got thrown out because I couldn't do anything because of this wound that was down to my bone. Like I couldn't work out, I couldn't sweat because something was going to get infected and I could potentially lose my leg. So as I was going through that, up to camp, I wound up forcing myself back and was just in pain. When I say like I couldn't go for a 10, 15-minute car ride without my game ready or my Normatec, which is either ice or compression machine, because my leg will swell up to about add 14 cc's of fluid in my leg just from anything. So I couldn't enjoy life. I just had my son. I couldn't walk around with him in the mall. I was 22 years old and I was living as if I was 70. So I just honestly went dark. Opioids became a problem my rookie year, and weed, to be honest. Like at that time, it was bad. Like I was in a very dark place. Stopped talking to my father. My personal relationships was just terrible, and I wasn't around as a father. So that season, well, I get through the season, and during that season, got a little crazy. Wound up for, I think, like week 14, I just was mentally like drained. Like I just wanted to just run away somewhere in the world where nobody could find me. And I just went up to Belichick during a walkthrough, and I told him I didn't want to play. I wanted to be not redshirted, put on, man, what's it called when you got put? It's when you get put on medical for the end of the year.
Yeah.
And it came out as if I had an injury because that's what it's supposed to look like. So people kept saying I was injury prone, but I was just ready to be done with football as a whole. Like I didn't want to deal with it no more. I just could not. Like life was just terrible. And then I went to Germany. I wound up finding a doctor out in Germany that a lot of athletes go to that's Rekenegine. And I went and did that. And it's like a stem cell, but it's the actual stem cell where it originated from. And honestly, that was the first time I went to Amsterdam. So I went to Amsterdam and I'm walking around with the mother of my kids. And 4 hours later, she just stopped. She's like, "You realize you ain't complained about your knee not one time?" I was like, "Nah, I didn't." So that was the first time in probably like 2-3 years that I was able to walk around with no pain. So it was like a life-changing.
Wow.
Yeah. It was a life-changing situation for me. And from there, next year, I feel like I became a better person. I went and apologized to everybody that because I was, excuse my language, I was an asshole to a lot of people, a lot of my teammates during those times. And
well, that's part of like the mental health challenges that you were going through and part of opioid addiction. You are an asshole. You're irritable. You're like kind of angry, mean. You got an edge, all that stuff. Yeah.
And I went after that during that off season. I wound up practicing Muslim. I wound up practicing Islam, and I became a Muslim. So a lot of my friends converted a couple years back because we all grew up with this thing to us where it's sad. Each and every one of my friends that grew up and left to play college ball somewhere, we all got in a criminal situation for fighting. In our colleges. Like we all did. But some people got kicked back and sent back to home. Some of us just were lucky enough, like me, to be able to get past the situation, move on. But yeah, during college, they all converted because we had that. And then I talked to one of my close friends and asked him like how he get past this part of him. And he told me it was practicing Islam. And it created, for me, at the time, it created discipline, and it honestly brought back a lot of patience for me, and I became a different person. But during those times, I had people that were still my friends, and obviously the public putting this negativity on me, like you said, Islam. So it became something so like it was, and this is traumatic as well, to the point where the NFL had put me on a watch list because, because I posted on Twitter that I just converted, and Al Qaeda, whatever, somebody from Pakistan,
Al Qaeda,
Al Qaeda had reposted it on their Twitter. Yes,
oh
exactly.
my God.
So one day I'm in a meeting and our security guard comes and gets me and takes out a whole booklet of my Twitter, asking me if I know this person, I'm just like, so y'all think I'm a terrorist or something? Yeah.
Right.
Exactly.
I mean, oh my God, we could talk for 15,000 hours about this, but anyway.
Yeah. So throughout the time, like when I was there, that next year, I was still praying. I was still doing my prayers, but I would get dirty looks from there. I would get dirty looks from certain coaches, from certain players. Some of my friends throughout that time was not supportive at all. So it got to me after a while. Like I was holding strong, I was doing good, and it helped me get past things that I need to get past. But the people who were, besides one of my friends, people who were close to me didn't support that. So I wound up giving in and just being like, nah, I'm not doing it no more or whatever. So that was a big thing of mine. Like that still sticks me to this day, that I wish that I could have continued to do that, because I seen a different person growing at that time. And I kind of reverted back to the traumatic, reactive person after that, because I got cut from the Patriots from person there telling the head coach that I was doing stuff with other women while I was with the woman of my kids. Exactly. So it was a lot of stuff going on during those times, along with the surgeries. And honestly, it was just, for me, I just chalked it up as life. And now I'm able to talk about these things and reflect back on them and allow myself to see who I was during those times. And now when that happens, now I get put in those positions, I react totally different.
Wow. See what I get when I ask a question about that? Like all this, like thank you so much for sharing. I mean, you saw my facial expressions, you saw my head moving here and there talk while you were talking. It's
Yeah, it was
when
a lot.
when we talk about you all who you grew up with going to college and fighting, that is an expression of the trauma that you've experienced, right? The fight, flight, or freeze that happens when you get triggered by someone else who might think that's totally innocent. Like, why are they acting like that? Like, there is a way that trauma gets evoked, unbeknownst to us sometimes, until we grow and practice self-awareness and look back and kind of see you all were dealing with that, right? It plays out. You just because you go to college and play football and move doesn't mean the inner workings of who you are is different. It's the same, just a new environment, a challenging one. You know, any young person going to college is going to be faced with a lot of change. And again, another few hours we could talk about that, but like, and without a lot of real, when I say real, like care about you as a human being, real guidance to help you navigate that transition is a lot, and to help you put words to it. And then you're just trying to find something greater to believe in to help you be a better man. Like, you know, like believing in this new technology in Germany. Like, I don't know if I would have done that. Like, okay, but it sounds the level of desperation and the level of yearning to be better, that I got to try this thing, right? And then finding Islam and a faith that you believed in, but then got shunned for. I mean, our beliefs in a political climate that's a certain way is going to be a lot. Like, if it doesn't vibe with being American, I mean, it's right.
Exactly.
Oh my God, it's so deep. All you're trying to do is be better, feel better. And again, this is what they did. Some of your close friends or, acquaintances like that, I've seen them do that and that helps them feel better. I'm going to try it. Why not? Yeah. Why wouldn't you? And then to be like shunned and then talked bad about and being under scrutiny, not just by the public, but within the club that you are working for, the organization that you're working for. I think that being able to speak about this is super important for anyone listening, anyone that can relate to any aspect of this. And to come, I mean, it's always a journey, but to come to a place where you want to give back, where you've learned so much about yourself and the inner dynamics of how mental health, trauma, the business of life, not just the X and O's of football, like applying that to become an investor, an advocate, a writer, a public speaker is super, super amazing. What keeps you going now? What keeps you going now? You founded the Easley Foundation, doing some awesome things. Like, what keeps you going?
Honestly, I was asked that question, like, what is your why? My why is, I don't think about, I love my kids. I love life.
How old are your kids?
I have 5. So
Okay.
11, the 3 boys are 11, 9, and 4. And then the 2 girls, and the 2 girls are 9 and a year old. She just turned a year. Yep. So we're a blended family.
Love it.
And it's just, for me, with life, I just I just like to win. Like, I don't think about my kids. I don't think about like me being poor back in the days. No, it's like, okay, I'm doing real estate. I just want to win each deal. I just like to win. You know what I mean? I'm getting now, next year, I will be coaching. I will be getting back to coaching. So I'm excited for that.
That's awesome.
Yeah. So I'm definitely excited for that. So I love kids. Like, I love kids. My mom, she was a teacher. She taught all my friends in the project. So we just love kids. We got a big family on her side and on my father's side. So I want to be somewhere where I'm changing kids' lives.
Well, it sounds like you want to be a version of what you wish you had when you were growing up.
Without a doubt. That's exactly that's pretty good. I didn't even think about that. Pretty good.
I mean, a lot of us who have identified it our whys are really, that's what it comes down to. It's that deep and that personal. And I think one of the few ways that really accesses our passion and our ability to keep going. You know, when I talk to people about this, it's pretty universal, even my own why. Like, I wish, I had someone like who I am now as a professional, as a person, as a woman of color to kind of like be there to guide me through my trials and tribulations. And I think when we think about it, that's how we give back. That's how we, accessing the depth of that is like so huge and keeps us going even in the toughest times. And yeah, you love kids. You got a bunch of them in your house. You got a bunch of them on your mother's side, your father's side. Like, I mean, as a father, as a husband, as, all the things that you are, you had to find other identities outside of football, outside of the behaviors that people define you as. Like someone who goes against your wife, somebody who is prone to injury, somebody who is addicted, somebody like all these things, right? Someone who is part of a faith that is like negative and against our country. Like, what? I mean, I think, how would you describe who you are now? What are your identities?
I am first a father. Well, I would say I'm learning, well, in this time of my life, I have learned what the importance life is for me, right? Not from where everybody else is. For
yes.
me,
Yep.
is one, a husband. So I apologize. First, a husband. Second, a father. And I'm not a person who is faith particularly driven. I believe in all faiths and all gods, just because I've been through, I like to learn. So I'm a person who just, I want to say, just wants to make a difference, wants to allow people to have different conversations.
Yes.
Because that's where I feel like it starts. And that's something, as a kid, like you said, growing up, we used to always have, I remember we used to be in the buildings having deep conversations, but they were just about, they weren't vulnerable about ourselves, but they were just about the, how can I say, the conspiracies of the world and stuff like that. So we was able to have conversations on what was only being put in front of us. So, and that comes to, right, being a Black man, being in the Black community, what access you have as well. So
for sure.
I want to be that person to give access to change conversations.
Access key. Is that what the Easley Foundation is about at its core?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Because without vulnerability, you don't have access.
Tell me more. Tell me more about the Easley Foundation and the sort of mission of it, its pillars, things like that.
Yeah. So the Easley Foundation is for all student athletes to be able to learn how to have the ability to be vulnerable, which creates access and have resources to be able to learn how to do these things, not only for the student athletes, but to be able to also teach the people who are close around you so you guys can work cohesively, because nobody's in this world alone.
Right.
So being able to teach them that. And for me and the Easley Foundation, one thing that very big on is the education and how to teach and give people grace to be vulnerable and learn how to be vulnerable, because it's not, you can be vulnerable on the giving end, but you also need to learn how to be vulnerable on the receiving end. And that's where I feel like is the most important part, is when you're on the receiving end, because everybody can talk about not everybody can talk about how they feel, but it's much easier to talk about how you feel and get out what you're going through. But it's not easy for a person to put themselves below the person who they are speaking to be able to take in the words that they're saying and not take it personally and understand that person is expressing their feelings, and to be able to respect and actually give grace to that person. So that's in all aspects of a person, personal, family, and business as well, because you need that in business, because a lot of people tend to hide things in business, and then when things are not going good because they feel a certain way and they're embarrassed. But if you're vulnerable enough, and I'm speaking like this because I'm one of these people. Like I'm a person that is, like, I'm speaking about myself here, and I'm still growing on that end, on learning how to reach out and be vulnerable to people to be able to better yourself. And you don't even know this, but the question that you ask might come down the line for them in some part of their life. And they gave you the answer, but it's actually you're giving them the answer at that time.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. No, I think what you're talking about, and I want to simplify it, is like empathy, having empathy, being able to put yourself in someone else's shoes and like really connect with that and really like you said, have grace and respect.
So I try to stay away from, because a lot of people, there's two sayings that as I'm growing up and learning who I am, I don't believe in, is treat people how you want to be treated and putting yourself in another person's shoes.
You don't believe in that. You don't believe in that. Tell me. I want to hear.
Explain why. So
yes, please.
Putting yourself in another person's shoes is absolutely impossible. Fair. It is no way for a person or for me to put myself in your shoes and feel exactly what you feel. So I can never feel that. So that understanding won't come natural to me. But if I have the understanding that, okay, what you say doesn't have anything to do with me and I won't take it personal, I have to sit back and learn how to hear you. Because if I learn how to hear what you're saying, I won't take it personal. I'll be able to understand and even give advice for you or give you something back. You know what I mean? Outside of a reaction. And empathy, empathy and putting yourself in someone else's shoes, I feel like it's still a reaction because you're trying to feel, like when you say, I'm gonna put myself in your shoes, I'm trying to feel what you feel, but I can never do that. So automatically we're at a fight now. Now we're at a fight, but we don't mentally know this because we're trying to feel a feeling of someone else that now we're trying to compare. You get what I'm saying? So
interesting.
So I try to stay away from that and treat people how you want to be treated. I don't believe in, because I don't want to be treated the same way you want to be treated. I'm going to learn how you want to be treated. I'm going to learn how you want to be treated and who you are, and I will treat you that way because the things that I like, you might not like. And if I'm doing something, and that goes back to love language, if I'm doing something that you don't like, who's really wrong? No one's wrong, but it's the fact that we're not understanding who you are and we're not learning who you are, understanding how to, okay, she likes this, so I'm going to do this for her. He likes this, so I'm going to do this for her. We don't like the same things, and that's perfectly fine. That's what makes humans connect.
So interesting. I want to take it a level deeper because I get what you're saying. Saying. If we were to like go to the empathy piece, I think it's empathetic to be able to say, I can only imagine how you might be feeling in this moment right here in that story that you are sharing. And there are ways that I can relate to that feeling. And I can put myself in the shoes. I mean, it's kind of a dumb, like, let's take that out of it. Like, I can put myself in situations that make me feel that way. So then there's a connection, even though it might not be the same thing. See what I'm saying?
So, yeah, and I agree with you. Totally. I agree with you. And you can tell me if I'm wrong, right? When you talk.
No, I will never tell you that you're wrong.
No. And when you're talking to a human being, that is emotional, that's an emotional state, there's a couple of things that I worry about when they're trying to express their emotions to me. One, mentioning myself, right? Because I don't want them to feel like I'm only worried about myself, and I don't want the attention to be taken off of them because they're telling me for the attention. So mentioning myself, so that's I'm putting myself in the same shoes, you know what I mean? And then the part of, I know how you're feeling, right? For some people, that might be a big trigger word because some people might say, no, you don't. And I'm saying this because, right, if you look at a black and white thing, if a white person tells a black person, I know how you feeling, oh, that black person gonna trip. You know what I'm saying? Because that's a trigger. It's a trigger word, but the person's only trying to tell you, they're trying to understand and relate you. So it's not the intention of those words, but it's those words that I'm now starting to understand. When you're talking to humans and us as people, we're emotional. Words are emotional. So
for sure.
when someone's trying to tell me how they feel, those are certain things that I try to stay away from, so I won't, and it might not trigger them, but there's not a possibility that I'm gonna allow that. I
For
don't know if that
sure.
makes sense.
No, totally. No, I think I love this conversation because what we are actually doing in real life right now is being vulnerable to each other,
Yeah.
which I think is fantastic. We're not gonna. The goal is not to agree with each other. The goal is to learn from what the other person is saying, and hopefully bring that growth into our lives and into other interactions. My hope with I totally get everything you're saying. My hope is that if someone is to say, I can imagine how you were feeling, it's only because that person shared how they're feeling, right? We're not going to put that on somebody, right? And I think the piece about, which I think is also amazing, the you don't agree with, I want to treat you how I'm treated. Well, it's not the way, if we like zoom out a little bit and I want to see what you think about it, not that I want to do the exact same things for you or to you or with you that I know make me feel a certain kind of way, but it's that I am always going to strive to be respectful, honest, act with grace, humility. Like it's the sort of quality of how I want to treat you, but not the exact actions that would maybe signify that. And learning, what does it feel like to you? What does it mean to you to be treated with respect and being curious about that? Right? Because I don't think anyone doesn't want to be treated with respect, but how that looks.
What does respect? Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Yeah. So I think we're saying the same thing in a different way, but like, again, chopping it up and like really, giving me food for thought and like helping me understand. It's super cool. I always like to grow and learn. So thank you for that. Thank you for being you. I think in some ways, you are, whether you like it or not, I don't know how you feel about it, but a role model to anyone who touches you, who you touch, who you are showing, you're living what you want people to understand and grow in themselves. You're doing it. It's not just this will be good for you or this will be great, but like this is how I live and how I would love to add to how maybe you live on your terms, but let's co-create that. Let's talk about it together. I think you and I talked about this last time we chatted, but I think you said you want to be a therapist one day. Has that changed?
In school now? Nope, no. I'm in school. I graduate in the fall, and then I start my master's in family counseling.
Yeah. No, that's so cool.
Mm-hmm.
So darn cool. Again, the ongoing journey. Like I know when I went through my education and training, I learned more. It was the best like personal experience, not just educational experience, because you are forced to apply what you're learning to your life, your family, and like take a deeper look. And so I'm excited for you. I'm super excited for you. Yeah, that's going to be so fun. If you were in a group right now with a bunch of young folks, men or girls and boys, maybe like middle school or freshman, sophomore in high school, wanting to grow and learn and be the best that they can be to themselves, to their siblings, their parents, what kind of conversation would that be like for you with them?
Oh, that's a good one. That would one, I would want to get to understand who they are. Two, I would allow them to, how can I say this? Insecurity lives with everybody.
Mm-hmm.
Allow them to really connect with their insecurity, to be comfortable with it. That will not stop them from growing, because that's all it does, right? That's all insecurity does. It's like a blockage that doesn't allow you to grow. And while I'm with them, share certain things that will allow them to be comfortable as well.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a big thing for me is I see a lot, especially the world that we live in now, superficials at its all-time high.
Yeah, right.
So allowing kids to be comfortable with their insecurities. Well, one, be aware of it, be aware of their actions behind it, and be comfortable with it, and show that because we live in a social norm that we determine what is a deviant act in every which way, right?
Mm.
So if we are comfortable with these acts that the norm would call deviant or the norm would call unacceptable, which is that we become more comfortable with it, and then we're able to give that to the next person. We're able to give that to our friends. Now we're all working cohesively, fixing the things that need to be fixed because we are able to be aware of it and be honest with ourselves through our actions.
Yep. So would you agree with me or no on the norm? Are you talking about like the dominant white patriarchal society? Is that what you're talking about when you say the norm?
Yes. And yes, that along with now social media has become category when it comes to
Yep.
the social number. So yes. Yeah.
Yes. Social media is an extension of that norm.
Yeah.
And us being able to identify it as that, and be real and name it and give them a language, I think is super important. Even though I'm not a middle schooler or a freshman or sophomore in high school, I'd love to sit in on that room with y'all, but like that.
Interesting. Because these kids nowadays, they are very interesting.
They are. I'm like, you just said that? What?
Yeah.
Wow. I know I have a 17-year-old, she's going to be 18 in December, and then a 9-year-old son. And like their worlds are so different. And like, I can't pretend to understand it fully, but being there like you are, I'm sure, and you're parenting to just understand them, do our best to understand them, give them a voice.
All you can do.
That's all you can do. Dom, this has been amazing. Again, we could have talked for hours about so many different things. I appreciate your vulnerability, your openness, your just willingness to share some of the stories that make you who you are, and just thank you.
Appreciate you. Thank you for having me.
This podcast exists because of the team at CAS-CM. CAS-CM is a B2B content production company helping organizations create and share their stories. We aim to create space where businesses can build assets and drive revenue through writing and talking. Content creation should be enjoyable and accessible. At CAS-CM, we love helping make that happen. Learn more at cascm.com.